What if the St. Louis Blues made the biggest mistakes that they've ever made in the franchise history, letting Craig Berube go? I'm going to talk about why I think this coming up here on Locked on Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On Blues. I'm your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today on Locked On Blues, I'm going to talk about if I think that Bannister will work out as the Blues' head coach and why I think letting go of Craig Berube is one of the worst decisions that this team has made. Well, not by team, I mean franchise has made. Are the Blues willing to trade Colton Parayko? And I miss hockey season. I need to talk about some things I'm observing in the playoffs that I think that the Blues could actually pick up on next season. A lot to dive into on today's episode of Locked On Blues. But first, I want to let you know that today's episode of Locked On Blues is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. Hello, and I hope everybody is having a great Tuesday. I have my custom St. Louis Blues sweater behind me that I got custom made, my own design, super cool. But on today's episode of Locked On Blues, I just want to continue talking about this Craig Berube going to Toronto. And I know I've talked about it a little bit, quite a lot. But, with a daily podcast, I have the ability to do so because it is something that, obviously it's on my mind. It's our former coach that is now with a team that has a good chance of winning a cup. Here's the thing. I personally think the Blues made a mistake. And I said this since day one. Letting Craig Berube go, firing Craig Berube in December was one of the worst decisions that this franchise has made. And I'll tell you why. It was never Craig Berube's fault. And, I was on a show the other day, another podcast. I was a guest on it. And the person said to me, oh, well, Craig Berube wasn't doing a good job. Craig Berube was doing a good job, okay? Craig Berube is one of those coaches that has nothing but respect for me and nothing but respect from us here in St. Louis. It wasn't Craig Berube's fault that the players didn't show up. It wasn't Craig Berube's fault any of what happened on the ice happened. He never lost the locker room. That rumor was put at rest. I think that there was just a lot of frustration about how poorly the Blues were playing during that time. And things got taken out of context, and people came up with this narrative, this false narrative that Craig Berube was this awful coach that didn't know what he was doing, that couldn't handle his own team. And that is simply not true. And the reason why this infuriates me and the reason why this upsets me and, gets on my nerve is because Craig Berube did not deserve what happened to him at all. And it has nothing to do with Drew Bannister, and my opinions on how I think he's going to do next season have nothing to do with Craig Berube. But I do think at the end of the day, the St. Louis Blues ended up getting rid of a coach that they should have kept and just fixed the team this offseason now. There was no reason for them to fire Berube when they did. You might disagree with me, and that's valid. You can have your opinion. I just think that there was nothing that Berube did that was worth firing him about. I guess it was a statement to the team to motivate them, but it's a really, and I have to use my language here, but it's a really interesting way of trying to motivate a team by firing the coach that won your organization their first ever Stanley Cup. And I'll leave it at that. That I do think that Craig Berube will thrive in Toronto because he does have talented players and he has a city that is excited to have him. In St. Louis, and I know that, people are going to say, oh, well, him and Doug are good. I don't know if I would be happy with an organization that fired me when they did and how they did. Only a couple seasons. I know it's like 5 seasons after the cup win, but he was the best coach the Blues have had. And again, it's something on Bannister, but do you look at him and do you think that Drew Bannister is much better than Craig Berube as a head coach? I want to, for the sake of the Blues is succeeding, I want to hope that Bannister will do a great job having his first full season as head coach. But what if Bannister doesn't do a good job? Then what happens? Are they going to, stand the 2 years out, or are they going to get rid of him and just buy him out? There are a lot of what ifs going into the season. I personally was a little bit surprised about Brendan Moore having that contract extension down in Carolina. I thought there were some talks that maybe him and the organization wasn't getting along, and I would have loved him to coach the Blues. I really would have. I love Brindy. But again, with Bannister, it's the question of what if. We saw him step in December, and, the Blues, they played all right underneath him, but they didn't get into the playoffs still, and they had a chance, but they had bad losses since Bannister took over. You think about the loss to the Blue Jackets, the Islanders, to the San Jose Sharks. You think about all the losses that were just really ugly losses to the Blackhawks. And yet, there's only one thing that people are saying. Oh, well, Berube, he lost the locker room. Is there proof of that? There is no proof of that. He was so well respected that his former players during Worlds this past weekend praised him on the job he did as head coach. You wouldn't praise a head coach that you didn't like, that lost the locker room. You wouldn't do that. I know Binnington wouldn't say anything positive. He didn't believe it. I know Parayko wouldn't do that. So you really have to ask yourself, what are the Blues doing with their decisions that they're making in the front office? Because the way I see it, you had a head coach that knew this game inside and out, right? And again, nothing to do with Bannister. But then for what they did to Berube, you're not going to get a coach like him again. And that's the facts. I mean, some of the best coaches in the NHL right now, like Bruce Cassidy. Could you imagine if we had Bruce Cassidy? But he's not going anywhere with the Knights. There's certain coaches that are just not going to go anywhere. So I understand the Blues had to do the best they could do with just extending, Bannister, and I get it. But it doesn't mean not having Armstrong. I mean, not Armstrong. Berube is hard because of Armstrong's decisions. Do I think Doug Armstrong is a good GM? I think he is. But there's also things I don't like about him as a GM. And that's okay. It's okay to have those feelings of, hey, I like our GM. I think he does a good job during the draft. I think that he, doesn't do anything impulsively for the most part. But at the same time, there are things I want to see him do more, like make trades this offseason. I want to see the Blues be an aggressive team. I want to see them acquire some really star players like DeBrusque. Bruin season's done. You should be thinking about him. You need to think about these type of things because another team's going to snatch him up. And here's the thing. And here's the frustrating factor. What if St. Louis? What if the Blues don't make the playoffs next season? Then what? Do you say, oh, yeah, no, it was a great move getting rid of Berube? Or are you going to say something along the lines of, oh, the downfall of this was getting rid of Berube? I think that right now, the Blues seem to me desperate. You got rid, I mean, there's a reason why the headlines are so big. It's not just because the Leafs have such a big, fan base and they're the Leafs. They're one of the big faces, original six of the NHL. But it's because of the talent that Berube has. So I want you to really think about what this means for the St. Louis Blues and why there should be some concern. Because right now I'm concerned because this is a season where they need to make the playoffs or else get rid of everybody. Not Robert Thomas, though. Not Binnington and not Neighbors. But get rid of everybody else if that's the case. Because clearly what the Blues are doing are just not working out. You can get rid of coaches, you can get rid of different personnel, but you're going to have to just eventually get rid of players that you like, that you want to see here, until their career's done, but that just might not happen. but time will tell. Time is the biggest factor when it comes to the St. Louis Blues, interestingly enough. All right, I'm going to talk to my friends about FanDuel. It's winner take all season in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit fanduel.com/locked on and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Visit fanduel.com to look at odds to include. Oh, wait. It says look at FanDuel. Okay, I'm sorry. That was me reading an ad read was just so funny because I just like completely just was like FanDuel.com. No, I love FanDuel. That's what I used to bet on. So FanDuel is the best, honestly. Bet the NBA champions. Maybe the Mavs, right? The Dallas Mavericks. Could you imagine if the Mavs and the Stars both won? It'd be like a double Dallas combination. So visit fanduel.com/locked on. Will Colton Parayko be traded? I am seeing a lot of rumors on social media about this, and nothing has truth to it because, again, there's no sources confirming anything, but it is a statement that I do find peculiarly interesting to the team that people think he will get traded to. And that is, oh, you guessed it. You're so smart. The Toronto Maple Leafs. A lot of people, for some reason, are saying that they could see Parayko on the Leafs. And I think that Parayko would make a good addition to the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say that he wouldn't. He would fit in very well on that team. I think maybe because of the whole, Bannister becoming the head coach and then Parayko speaking highly about him. But Bennington also spoke really highly of Bannister. Of Berube. Why did I say Bannister? See what I'm saying? It's so many coaches. No, but Parayko spoke very highly of Berube, and I feel like that is causing people to now kind of go into panic mode and think that he will be traded to the Leafs. If Parayko does get traded to the Maple Leafs, please give the Blues Austin Matthews. Equal value. No, could you imagine equal value? No, that's like anything but equal value. No offense to Parayko, but Austin Matthews is worth a lot. He is worth draft picks, more a combination of players. Like he's not just worth one player. And that's with anybody. But I realistically could see that trade happening. Oh, my light is flashing off and on. Oh, that was a little spooky. Do not worry. We're here. My power looks like it went out. So I will use my phone light. Wow, my power went out. That is so scary. Hi, Locked On Blues. My face, I literally looked like I saw a ghost. But yeah, no, I could see that happening, and that is a possibility. So again, I would not be surprised if that happened. Also, I want to give you a friendly reminder to make sure that you are following on Twitter at Locked On Blues. We also have an Instagram, which is at Locked On Blues with an underscore at the end. So we're all over social media. But most importantly, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We are almost at 1,000 subscribers, which is so cool. I will be heading out to the draft actually to cover it for the St. Louis Blues. And I am hoping that by the time I go to the draft in the end of June, this channel will have 1,000 subscribers. That way you can be in tune with all the exclusive Blues content that I will be providing. So yes, I am flying out to the draft on my own dime because honestly, I just want to see what's going on with the draft and to cover it. And I'm just like super pumped up for it. So make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date with everything. Speaking of staying up to date with everything, I have been watching the NHL playoffs and it got me thinking about the Blues. When the Blues were in the playoffs, we had a Cinderella run. We had a Cinderella story, actually. And I'm not seeing it this year with any other team. The Dallas Stars, they obviously finished first in the Central, so no surprise on that one. The Oilers, great hockey team. They had a rough start to the season, but they picked up like they usually do. Then you have on the East, you have the Florida Panthers that were amazing season, and then the Rangers that were the President Trophy winners. So clearly, when it comes to teams in the Final Four, I'm going to go do some March Madness terms. There's not a team that wasn't supposed to be there. I think that they were all supposed to be there, despite the fact that I predicted this to be, who would be there, except I had Vancouver over Edmonton. But I want you, honestly, to let me know if you enjoy watching playoff hockey with teams that were supposed to be there, or maybe you like the dramatics, the theatrics of the teams that were not supposed to be there. It's a really interesting concept when you truly think about it. Because with the St. Louis Blues, I think what made our cup run so interesting, so intriguing, and just so captivating, it all had to do with the fact that the Blues, this entire time we were competing for the cup, were not supposed to be there. We were dead last in January. And yet we were able to make it to the playoffs somehow. Like, that was insane. Like, we went on an 11-game winning streak. That was crazy. And we were able to go to the playoffs. But what if next season the Blues pick up some star players, like they pick up a Jacob DeBrusk, a Sam Reinhart, right? They pick up some really good players, and then they're able to finish on top of the Central, and they were supposed to be there. Because I also want to experience us winning the cup as a team that was supposed to be there. And I know that might sound a little bit silly, but we've experienced the cup as an underdog. I want to experience the cup as a top dog. And that is something I want to see in my lifetime. And I think that, seeing multiple cups, it's not selfish. There are so many teams in the National Hockey League that have multiple Stanley Cups. We do not. We do not at all. I mean, it took us since 1967 to get our first one in 19. So clearly, we're a little bit cup deprived. But there are also plenty of organizations that have never won a Stanley Cup. It's weird when you think about it, right? Like, in 1967, all the way up until 2019, like, we didn't have a Stanley Cup. And now we have a Stanley Cup. It's crazy how, the time goes by and all the greats that played for us. And I've talked about this all the time. You have Brett Hull, you have Gretzky for his 18 games. You have so many players that came in and out of this organization. And yet, after all of the greats, you had a team with Pat Maroon. No, I'm joking. I love Pat Maroon. But you had a team with these players win the cup. It's a funny thing when you really think about it in perspective, and you think about the fact that, despite how good this team was at times, they made it to the Stanley Cup multiple times, the finals, and they lost clearly. But it wasn't like they were always like this bad team. Like, the Blues were always like a contending team. And that's as far as I remember, even as a little kid. I mean, I'm 25 now. I just knew that the Blues were always just like an average team. Like, they would always contend somehow. Some years they wouldn't. But it wasn't like one of these teams that was just doomed. And I think that now I'm watching the playoffs. I am seeing playoff hockey at its finest with teams that were supposed to be there. And it makes me think all the Blues have to do, honestly, to be there, it's simple. Their penalty kill isn't bad, just they need to work on that a little bit. Power play does need to work, but it's not unfixable. And they're 5-on-5. Again, full strength. It's not awful, but they just need to improve it. It's not like they have to completely redo it. So I think that the Blues just really need to focus on those elements, and then they will be able to be a contending team. I think they're going to be a contending team next season even. I don't think that this is a team that you can ever count out. And you shouldn't count out because this team does have talent. I don't know. Like, I'm really optimistic because watching the playoffs, obviously, there is a part of me that has FOMO, like the fear of missing out. And I just don't want the Blues to miss out on a potential second Stanley Cup with Binnington and Thomas, especially. Like, it would be cool for Jake Neighbors one day to get a Stanley Cup as a St. Louis Blue. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I just want another Stanley Cup, but I want it with some of the players that won the first one just because I think that they're too good not to win it again. I think you have one of the best goalies in the league in Jordan Binnington. I will defend him forever. And I just think that at the end of the day, a couple of trades, a couple of acquisitions could change this entire team. But, and this is a big one, If the Blues end up not being successful, are you going to blame it on one thing and one thing only? The firing of Craig Berube. That's the question of the day. So let me know down below what you think, and hopefully my power will be back. It is crazy how I was able to just like honestly pick up my phone and just say, hey, let's make this work. All right. I will talk to you tomorrow, per usual. And like always, because I can barely see right now, but don't worry, I will get this done because that's what we do here in Locked On Blues. I will see you tomorrow. So, like always, let's go Blues and subscribe. Let's go Blues.